Hello and welcome to this video where the plan is to show you what Power Query is and what it can do to help improve your organization's productivity in tasks related to manipulating data. Anyone with a Microsoft 365 subscription has Power Query built in Excel. As we will see, Power Query is also available for earlier versions of Excel. My goal with this video is to provide you with enough information to get you curious about Power Query and be willing to try it. If you or someone in your team is doing repetitive work involving data manipulation and that work is being done manually, then Power Query might be the tool you need to reduce the time spent on doing those tasks. My name is Celia Alves. I am a certified Excel expert, Microsoft certified trainer, Microsoft MVP for Office apps and services, and I work as an Excel consultant. We will see what Power Query is and how it can help companies with acquiring, manipulating, and transforming their data. We will then see how Power Query can help with data acquisition, and then we will look at some scenarios where Power Query might just be the right tool to use. We will see where Power Query is available and how to access it. We will take a brief look at the connectors that are currently available for Power Query to connect to other data sources. And finally, we will look at some practice examples of task automation using Power Query. More specifically, we will see an example where we have a folder that contains CSV files and we want to compile that information in Excel. A second demo will be about comparing two sets of data. And finally, we will take a brief look at Power Query capabilities to connect to the web to extract information available there. In all these examples, the goal is to use Power Query to automate these tasks so that we don't have to do them manually every time we need to repeat the same process. So what is Power Query? Power Query was at some point renamed as Get and Transform Data, but that name was never fully adopted by the community. Eventually, Microsoft ended up reverting to the original name of Power Query. Power Query is what we call an ETL tool. ETL stands for Extract, Transform, and Load. Power Query is a Microsoft technology that provides business users with an easy way to connect to data that can be stored in many different sources, establish the process of reshaping that data to fit their needs, and bring it to where it can be consumed, for example, into Excel to then generate some reports. Power Query has a programming language called M that the program uses to record the user's steps. You don't need to know how to program in M to be able to start using Power Query and to accomplish amazing things with it. So how can Power Query help users with data acquisition? Microsoft's documentation mentions that business users spend up to 80% of their time on data preparation, delaying analysis and decision making. From my experience, and depending on how the data is entered and is made available from the different systems in an organization, it is often true that preparing the data to have it ready for consumption can take more time than building the report itself. There are different kinds of challenges that Power Query can help to address. Power Query allows the user to connect to a wide variety of data sources, regardless of their size and shape. The experience offered by Power Query to connect to those different sources and interact with their content is consistent across all data sources. The user interface makes it very easy to learn and start creating data manipulation processes and make them repeatable when the data changes in the source. The many tools available in Power Query's ribbon offer the user the possibility of performing almost any kind of data reshaping task using the user interface without requiring to write any code. Power Query is prepared to work with large amounts of data, even going beyond the maximum number of rows available in an Excel sheet, and to deal with both manual, automatic, or pre-scheduled data refreshing processes. One common scenario is when we want to extract the relevant information from one file and reshape it to have it on a different layout. A common example is when we have to update a monthly report that is always based on the same type of data source. The only thing that changes are the values in the source, but the structure of that source is still the same. We can use Power Query to automate the process of performing the transformations we need to get the data into the final layout. The picture shows two processes of changing the data layout. Both can happen, and Power Query can handle both. The first process starts with data organized in a tabular form in the blue table. And the goal is to reshape the data so that the result shows all the courses taken by one same person presented into one single string of text. The second process has the green table as the source, and the goal is to get the data presented in a tabular form as shown in the blue table. Power Query allows the user to automate any of these processes. It does not take much time to instruct Power Query how to perform these tasks, and the gain from investing that time becomes higher when we are talking about a task that needs to be repeated regularly. Another common scenario is when we want to combine data coming from different sources. For example, a CSV report and a table in Excel. Or another example, when we want to cross the information existing on a database with the one in a SharePoint list. Power Query can help us with challenges like this. Another scenario is when we want to combine data from different files to accumulate organized information over time. We could have a folder where files with data are accumulated along the time, and when we have a new file placed into that folder, we want to update the report that considers all the information contained in all the files. For example, a sales report is based on the monthly files with information about sales saved in a specific folder. Another common scenario is when the user needs to clean data where the input process was not consistent, or when the data comes with unwanted characters. In the picture on the blue table, we see an example of a situation where both things happen. The same name is entered in many different ways, and some extra spaces or characters need to be removed before the data can be ready for consumption. And the table in green shows a report created with Power Query that deals with all the mess that we see on the data source, presenting a final, clean and accurate summary table. Another scenario is when the user needs to compare two data tables and possibly even merge information existing in those tables. In the illustration, we see a situation where we have a table with employee names and vacation days used by each one, and the second table where we have each employee's manager's name. We want to find an easy way to match each employee with its manager name. Power Query can easily take care of a task like this, and as you can imagine, the rewards are even more valuable when we are dealing with long tables. The final scenario that I wanted to mention is where we need to relate the different tables. Some tables are what we call the lookup tables with the information about each client, for example. The other ones are transaction tables with the information about sales or any operational process in the organization. Sometimes the user chooses to create one single table combining all the information coming from the several tables to be able to generate reports based on pivot tables. But the truth is that we don't need to merge all those tables into just one to be able to use the pivot table functionality with that data. We can maintain them separate from each other and indicate the relationship existing between them. This way, we have what we call a data model, and we can create pivot tables using the fields in different tables of that data model. Power Query is the perfect tool for extracting information from the sources and generating each one of the tables that are part of the data model. At this point, you might be asking, okay, so where can I find Power Query? We can find Power Query in different Microsoft programs. For example, in Power BI, Excel, and Power Automate, among others. Our focus today will be on Power Query in Excel. In Excel, Power Query is currently available for the desktop version only, but there are online integrations of Power Query for other Microsoft programs. Now let's talk about the Excel versions that contain Power Query. Power Query has been available in Excel as a built-in tool since the 2016 version. We can find Power Query in the Data tab under the group Get and Transform Data. For Excel 2010 and 2013, it is also possible to install Power Query as an Excel add-in. Regarding Excel for Mac, Power Query is already available but still with limited functionality when compared to the version for Windows. Concerning the different data sources to which we can connect Power Query, this is the list available when this video is being recorded. We can see the enormous variety of data sources that we can use, including Excel and CSV files that we will be using today, but also JSON, PDF files, SQL Server Analysis Service, and so on. So let's jump into some practical examples. Please note that I will not be explaining each feature, setting, or button in detail for the sake of time. Instead, I will focus on showing you how easy it can be to automate a task with Power Query. In the first example, we have a folder named CSV Reports, where every month we save a new CSV file with transaction details coming from a credit card payment platform. The goal is to combine that data month over month and collect the relevant columns for a report. So this is our situation. We have a CSV reports file where we currently have 3 files for the months of 2019 January through March. If we open these CSV files, right-clicking on it, open with Notepad, it is a text file and we see how the text is in the file. These text files have data laid out each record on a row. The first row would be the column headers, and each field on a record is separate by a comma. If I double click to open it in Excel, I get something like this, which is not pleasant. We can see that each record was placed into a cell only, with all the fields and not separate by columns. Let's not worry about that. Power Query can handle it. Going to close the file now. I don't want to save it. And I'll go back here and I will create a new Excel file called monthly report. Let's open this file and let's build the query that will connect to the CSV reports folder. So all I have to do is to go to the Data tab, click the button Get Data from File, from Folder, and browse the folder where I have the reports, or I can just paste the path here, click OK, and I am given a list of the content of that folder. I will do Transform Data, and from here I will say that I want the content of the files. I am given the opportunity to tweak some of the settings related to the CSV files. Usually these are correct and you don't need to worry much about it. Let's just click OK. And now we can start shaping our data. We can see that we have a column with everything in it. Before we start shaping the data, what we can do is to remove this column here where the file names show. We don't need that because we have a field with a date on each report. So I can click on that and do remove. And then this table, I want to make it so that every time there's a comma, I have data separated on a different column. So we can use this button, split column, by the limiter, say that the limiter is a comma, and that's it. There we go. We have everything separate now. Now we have a few rows where the headings repeat because we are compiling the information coming in the 3 files. So the first one we want to keep as column headers, but not the other ones. So let's first go to use first row as headers. So that's fine. Now we have the names for our columns. And then let's go and, for example, use the first column and remove any row that contains the word date. So I can just do a filter. Uncheck date. And there we go. Another important step is to verify the data type being used by each column. Here, Power Query already created a step for us automatically when we promoted the first row to column headers. And we can either use this step or we can delete it and then create our step here. Let's just first, before doing that, choose the columns that we want to keep. Let's click here to have more room and let's see which columns we want to keep. I want to keep date and I want to keep the currency, the gross fee, and net columns. All the other columns, let's imagine that they are not important for my report, so I don't need to bring them. I can just go right click and click remove other columns. These are the ones I want to keep. Let's imagine that I don't need to deal with transactions that are not made in euros. So I can come to currency column and then check the USD. So if you see here, there's a code being written for me that says select the rows where the currency is equal to EUR. That's what we want. Okay. Now let's finally decide what the data type is for each column. This one I want to indicate that it is a column that with dates, date type. Here it's text indicating the currency, and these 3 last ones are currency type. I don't really need the currency column, so I'm going to remove this one as well. I don't need to bring that because my report will be dealing only with that one currency. So that's it. We are ready to load this data to our file. Just go close and load to, and we have different options where we want to load our data to. I will say a table in the existing worksheet here and OK. Here on the side we have a list of queries. This is the one that we actually created. These other ones are helper queries that were automatically created by Power Query. We don't need to worry about these now. And that's it. We have our data. We can see that we have dates for January, February, and March. And now I could, for example, create a pivot table if I wanted to with this information. Let's just see how easy is that Power Query makes for us to have that table updated. I have another folder here with other months, let's say April. I'm going to copy that month, that file. I'm going to the CSV reports folder, paste the file there. Now we just need to come back to our Excel file, and in the Data tab, we have this button that says Refresh All. Just click there. You see it refreshed the query here. Let's check our table. We now have January, February, March, and April as expected. So that's how easy it is to create a connection to a folder and manipulate the data, bring what we need to bring, and then have it updated every month. You just need to create a query once. In the second scenario, we have 2 tables with information that we want to cross. I will show this better after I open the Excel file. So in this file, we have two tables. The first one has the number of days each employee already booked and the name of that employee. The second table has the employee ID number, the employee name, and the manager's name for each one of the employees. I want to create a list that has this information from the first table, but also includes the employee ID and the manager name for each one of them, and sorts the list by the manager name. So it makes me easier to separate the information that I need to send to each manager. So how can we do that? I can click on the table, go to Data, from Table/Range. I have the table. There's nothing here that I need to change. Power Query automatically introduced the Change Types tab and decided that the data in this column should be interpreted as whole numbers. That's fine. Let's leave it like that. And the employee column has data type text. That's fine too. Now I need to close and load too. And in this case, I don't want to load the table again because I already have it on my file. I will choose only create connection. Okay. We can see that the query appears here on the right and it was named after the table. This table here has the name Table 1. To make things more clear and easier for us in the next steps, we can rename the query, for example, to vacation days. Now let's do the same with the second table. We can see that the table is named Table 2. Maybe we can rename the table just now and call it Employees. And now go to Data, from Table/Range. This column should be, in fact, text type. Replace current step, the step that Power Query generated automatically. Name is a text column, manager is a text column, type of data, that's fine. So let's go and close and load to only create connection. Okay, so now we have two separate queries here. Now let's merge the information in the two tables. We can go to Get Data, Combine Queries, Merge. In the first drop-down, we pick a table. I will choose the vacation days table. It will be called the left table. And the second table will be the employees table. Now I need to indicate the column that will allow me to merge the information in the two tables. That column is the employee column in this table that has the same type of information as the column name. And finally, I need to choose the join kind, and it will be the left outer join kind. That means I will get the list of all the names in the first table with the corresponding match of information on the second table. Click OK. We get the Power Query editor. Now I need to click here, expand, and select the fields I want to bring. I don't need the employee name because I already have it here, but I want to bring the employee ID and the manager name. I don't want this, and I want to click OK, and that's it. We have the information that we needed. Now I can, for example, move the column with the employee ID to the left, and as I mentioned, I would like to have this list sorted by the manager name, let's say ascending order. And that's it. Now I can do close and load to, and I can put it anywhere. Just for this example, I'm going to put it here on the side. Okay. And we can see our final report that says that Chris, 1 day, vacations booked, and the manager is Anna, which is correct. Martin booked 8 days, and manager is also Anna, and so on. So again, now if I have, let's say, a new employee, Jarvis decided to book 2 days of vacation, and in fact Betsy added 2 more days. So for example, the 4 plus 2 more days to her vacation booked. I come here, right click, refresh, and now I have the new employee with vacation book Jarvis appearing at the end for Brania as a manager, and I also have Betty now with showing 6 days booked instead of 4 that we had before. So that's how easy it is to get the information updated once the queries are built already. Finally, I want to show you just a quick example of a connection to a web page where we have data that can change regularly, and we have a report based on that data, and we want to find an easy way to update our report every time we need to make it the information match what we have in the source. If you remember this slide where I showed you the list of connectors for Power Query, this information is in fact brought from the web. And it happens that every now and then Microsoft updates these lists because it made a new connector available, or it might have retired another connector. And every time I do a presentation where I talk about this topic, I want to have my list updated without having to spend a lot of time doing it. So let me show you the Excel file that I used to create this table to put in the presentation. This is the Excel file. If you go to the Data tab, and we click on Queries and Connections, there's a query already created here, and I'm going to show you just the steps it has. By going to the Source step here on the gear wheel, we can find the URL to where we are connecting our spreadsheet. And this is that page. That's the information that is visible online about the connectors for Power Query. We can see that there's this particular one about Facebook that it says that it has been retired. If I click in here, I can get a preview of what each one of these tables are. And I can see that this is the table that has the information that I need, not this one. After selecting that, I go to the next step where I get information from table. And I can see that I have the word included, where in the web page it shows a check mark. So I just need to replace the value. Every time there's a word included, I'm replacing it with the letter P. And then I do a filter step saying that I don't want the rows that have the word retirement on it to exclude that connector that is not available anymore. Then I do some column renaming, and that's it. That's how I get the information here. And then I do some formatting to have a font here that gives me the check mark icon instead of a P letter. So now every time I have to do a new presentation, I just need to come to this file and right click on the table, do refresh, and immediately I will have the table updated with the new connectors available on the website, and then I can use this information on my presentation. And this is the end of my presentation today. I hope you found the information useful to consider implementing Power Query right away in your work and your organization. The link on the screen shows where you can find Microsoft's documentation about Power Query. Thank you so much for your time, and good luck with your Power Query projects. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn.